I wonder if you've ever been to Milton Keynes. Has anybody been to Milton Keynes? For 12 years, I lived in Milton Keynes. And I want to say to you that it's not the awful place that the press sometimes make it out to be, quite the opposite. Yes, it does have concrete cows, but they're very realistic looking when you're driving by anyway. And they've become quite an attraction. People actually go to see the concrete cows. The really nice thing about Milton Keynes is the way it has been planned. It's a very spacious city, a city now of well over 200,000 people. But it's very easy to move around. You can get around very quickly. If there was a traffic jam of more than 4 or 5 cars, that was unusual. It's designed for modern living. And for children, it has everything you might need. Good schools, lots of facilities, and all sorts of things that children like to do. Bowling alleys, I think there were 2 of those, skating rink, you get the idea. It also has very fast trains into London. Well, Naomi will be fed up by now because she says I'm always talking about Milton Keynes. But I'm an ambassador for Milton Keynes. Every Christmas in Milton Keynes, there was a massive raffle organised by the community association to raise money for local charities. This raffle was to raffle a car. A local company every year would give a car, a nice car. And this car would be parked inside the indoor shopping centre, which was massive in Milton Keynes. And then local charities would book slots to sell tickets for people to win the car. You could sell them any way you liked, but obviously if you were stood in the area where the car was parked, it was much easier to sell the tickets. And for every ticket you sold, your charity would get 50p, and 50p would go to the community association to then be given out as grants to other charities. And they would raise thousands, tens of thousands of pounds every year from this raffle. I was involved with the Air Cadets, and each year we would book slots for the Air Cadets to go into town and to sell raffle tickets. Do you think the Air Cadets were keen to do that job? I can tell you that they never were. They never were. It was hard sometimes to get a good group of them to turn out. Why would that be? And the answer is because, of course, they had to stop and engage people. People who were busy shopping and walking past, they had to sort of stand in front of them, almost, to stop them, then ask them, would they be interested in buying a raffle ticket? Some people would know all about it. Others, because people came from miles around to shop in Milton Keynes, others would have to have it explained to them. And the Air Cadets found this difficult. And of course, you would see some people walking towards you when they suddenly realized there was a group of people selling raffle tickets. You would see them do the walk to one side and take the biggest circle round that they could. They didn't want to be stopped. And I think the Air Cadets picked that up. But others would see the Air Cadets there in their uniforms, and they would come straight over and they would want to talk to them, particularly ex-service people who were really interested in what the Air Cadets were doing, not just selling raffle tickets, but generally. And they would have long chats with them. Well, when Jesus sent out his disciples to carry on the work that he was doing, to preach about the kingdom of God, and to teach and to heal, they must have felt a bit like those Air Cadets, mustn't they? I'm not really sure about this. I'm not sure it's something I want to do. Just walk into a village or a town and begin speaking to people, engaging with people who might not want to hear what I have to say. And it's certainly true, even Jesus recognized that people would not all want to hear what the disciples had to say, because he says to them, verse 11, whatever town or village you enter, search there for some worthy person and stay at their house. If the house is deserving, let your peace rest on it. If it is not, let your peace return to you. If anyone will not welcome you or listen to your words, leave that home or town and shake the dust from your feet. Jesus knew that the disciples would not be universally welcomed, that it would be hard work doing what he had asked them to do. It wasn't an easy task. He was effectively sending them out as salesmen, wasn't he? To sell the kingdom of God. And even though what they were offering was free and could be life-changing, many were not interested. And it's the same today, isn't it? If more people were interested in the kingdom of God and in what Jesus has to say, then surely our churches would be cram-packed full on a Sunday morning. But it isn't the case. I do wonder, though, whether for some people, it's not that they're not interested, but that they've never properly heard the message. They've never really heard who Jesus is and what he has done for us. It's said that we live in an unchurched generation, that young people are growing up knowing nothing about the gospel, that they know nothing about God, the Bible, or the church. At its worst, it's said that young people think Jesus is a swear word, not the Son of God. Well, if that's true, then the onus must be on us to reach out with the gospel, to live out the gospel in our lives, to talk about Jesus, and to share our faith with others. But we, of course, are also like those air cadets, aren't we? So often we are nervous about how we might be received. We're not sure that people will be interested in what we have to say. We're not confident about how people will react. But I wonder if we worry too much. I'm sure I've told you this story before, but it's worth telling you again. It's about an elderly lady I knew who one day got a new neighbour. And she got chatting to her neighbour over the fence, as you do. This is a true story. And after some weeks, maybe months, one day she was brave enough to ask her neighbour if she would like to come to church on Sunday morning. And do you know what her neighbour said? Yes, I would love to come to church with you on Sunday morning. She'd been too nervous to go herself, but if she was invited, she had somebody to go with. And she went with this lady, and she never stopped going thereafter. She went to church every Sunday. She just needed to be asked. And I know I've said this to you before. If there was one person each of us could ask, do you want to come to church with me? Would you like to come to church with me? If we could each bring one person to church, then our church would double in size overnight. It's worth thinking about, isn't it? Maybe we shouldn't be nervous, unconfident about these things. We don't have to be heavy when we're sharing our faith. Sometimes it's just a kind word that counts. Or as I've said, maybe just a simple invite. Maybe if somebody's got a problem, we might say to them, look, when I have a problem, I pray about it. Would you like me to pray for you? And that simple prayer might make all the difference. Both of our readings today were talking about welcoming people, welcoming the disciples, welcoming the stranger in our midst. And one way we can show God's love for people is by welcoming them. This got me thinking about the welcome we give to people who come to our churches. Have you ever considered how hard it must be for someone who's never been here before to walk through the door at the back of church? It's easy if you've been here many times. You know exactly what you're going to find inside. You know who you're going to see. You know where you can sit. You know what's going to happen in the service. But for the stranger, it's all completely unknown. And I've had that same experience, even having been ordained for 35 years. I've had that same experience when I go on holiday and I go to a new church. And it's still slightly daunting, walking through that door, not being quite sure what you're going to find inside. What sort of welcome do we give people who come into our churches? You may have noticed on the time and talent survey that we've sent out, we've put welcomer as a separate role in the church. At first, we had it combined with sidesman, brackets, welcomer, giving out books, etc. But we've moved it now and we've put it on a separate line. And that's because as I was looking at these passages and as I was thinking about this whole subject of welcome, it seemed to me it has to be a separate ministry. It has to be something which stands by itself. There isn't time when you're giving out books to give people a proper welcome, not if they're new to the church. You need to be able to stop and chat with that person and welcome them properly into the church. And so I put on the time and talents survey both welcomer and sidesman. You can tick both if you like, that would be great. Or if you think you might have a particular gift for welcoming people who come to our church, and then you could tick that. And I want to tell you about the church that Naomi and I went to give you some idea of why I see those roles as different. It was a church in Swanage, which we've been to a couple of times now. It was the best welcome we've ever had in any church. We parked in the car park, and almost before we'd got out of the car, somebody was there to say, good morning, don't think I've seen you before, welcome to our church. And then they chatted with us as we walked into church. They left us. As we walked through the door, again, there was somebody there to welcome us, to ask us where we'd come from, why we'd come to All Saints on that particular occasion. And then do you know what they did? They pointed us across to the croissants and the coffee that were there on the table at the side. And they said, come and help yourself. Grab a croissant, have some coffee before the service. And it was just such a lovely way to be welcomed to that church. And we grabbed our coffee and croissant, chatted to a couple more people, and then we sat down and waited for the service to begin. Even the vicar noticed that he hadn't met us before and came and quickly said hello before the service. And those sort of first impressions are so important, aren't they? I'm not saying we don't welcome people well in our churches. I'm just asking the question, could we do an even better job? There used to be two church newspapers, the Church Times and the Church of England newspaper. I have a feeling the latter is no longer published. I could be wrong, but certainly the circulation was already going down significantly even before COVID. One thing I liked about the Church of England newspaper was they used to do a thing they called Mystery Shopper. And they used to send one of their reporters to different churches on a Sunday. And then they would report back in the newspaper what they found. And they would score the church on things like its welcome. And also on the hospitality that was offered after the service. Even down to what the cups were like. You know, were they those green cups that you always used to find in church, or were they something a bit more modern, nice mugs with coffee? Was the coffee really nice coffee, or yeah, you get the idea, don't you? It's all worth thinking about because we want to make people feel as welcome as possible into our churches. It's part of sharing our faith. It's part of sharing the love of God, the love that God has for other people, the love that he spoke about to the Israelites way back when they came out of Egypt. And he said, I want you to love the stranger and the foreigner among you. I went to a student church years ago, of course, when I was a student, and actually, it wasn't a student church, but I was a student at the time. It was my local church to where I was living. And there was someone there every Sunday who was ready to offer lunch to any new people that came to the church. What about that? And so I went to this church on the first Sunday. They said to me, welcome, etc. What are you doing for lunch today? Would you like to come to lunch? And, well, I was a student. Free lunch. That was great. And so I went to lunch with these people, and it was very not exactly life-changing, although in a way it was, because in the afternoon they were going to a house church, and I'd never been to a house church before. They said, do you want to come along with us? And so I also got to experience the charismatic movement and the house church movement. Well, that might be a step too far for us, being ready to offer lunch on a Sunday, or maybe not. You can see what I'm trying to say there. Can we do even better in the way that we welcome people? One of the things that has happened in these past few weeks and has kept me on my toes a bit, making sure I don't miss anything, is weddings. Lots of weddings are now taking place, and we have a couple in church with us this morning who are going to be married, not here, but they've come to hear their bands read, and you're very welcome this morning. Another thing is baptisms. Lots of baptisms coming up. And so there'll be lots of people coming into our church who are new to us and to our worship. What sort of welcome will they receive? I hope that they will receive a really warm welcome, that we will have time to stop and chat with them and to put them at their ease the moment they walk through that door. If we want our church to grow, and surely we do want our church to grow, then how we reach out to people, how we welcome them, is surely key to that.